there can be, I know I've worked through this in my own life, this feeling for women of I'm less than, or I can't do the thing that I feel like God's calling me to do because of my health. And that's just not true.
No. And I think if you can just dare to dream in the middle of despair, that's actually a faith offering to God. And your call's going to look different than someone else's, but you didn't get where you are overnight. You didn't start from the sick bed to the place that you are. You know, it was a breadcrumb after a following Jesus one baby step at a time. And so I would say to that person watching it right now, it's probably hard for you to imagine, writing a full book or teaching a Bible study or starting a battered women's shelter, whatever it is that God's put on your heart. But you do the next thing, and you do the next thing. And for me, it's like the only way I've been able to do that is to respect my limits, but then appeal to the God who has no limits and say, do it. Do the impossible in and through me. And when I would have these flares, my temptation, because they're scary, neurological symptoms are terrifying, that always a default response would be to brace for impact, to pull back, to want to cancel all the stuff on my calendar. And the Lord would just, there's fear again, there's fear again. So what would faith require of you? Keep your wits about you. I have not given you a spirit of fear, but a power, love, sound mind. Do the next thing. Take a nap, have a snack, call a friend and pray with them over the phone. But just it's a nuanced journey. But when you do that and then you keep daring to dream in the face of fear, boy, that's when you start to see miracles happen.
Welcome to the Women of Joy Show. I'm your host, Megan Waldrop-Swindling, and I'm excited for you to join me today. Today, you're going to hear an interview with my friend, Susie Larson. Susie is a best-selling author of dozens of books, and she is the host of Susie Larson Live and travels the country speaking. We talk today about a very hard and real topic, our health and the shame that comes along with that. So if you struggle with health problems, or if you know someone that does, then this episode is for you, and I would think that would touch all of us. So please enjoy my conversation with Susie Larson.
Hold your head up high. This is our time.
Susie, welcome to the Women of Joy Show.
Hey, Megan, honored to be with you. Thanks for having me.
How many times have you been at Women of Joy now? I know you were just on the cruise. We had so much fun. And then, had you been in Branson before?
I've not been in Branson. No, this is
Pigeon Forge.
Nope, not yet. That's in a couple of weeks. So this is my number 3, and I think I've got 2 or 3 more to go.
Yay!
So,
and you'll be back on the cruise.
Yes, that's
next
right.
year,
that's
which is so fun.
So honored. I feel like you guys have become family. So it's been
It's been a special
joy.
Relationship, and that's where Angela and I were just talking earlier. The cruise is unique because you get a week together.
Yep.
And in that week. We realize that we have a lot in common with our bodies.
Indeed. Yeah. That wouldn't have happened in a normal conference setting.
There's no way.
We
so
had
busy.
repeated conversations that piggybacked on top of each other to learn some things we otherwise wouldn't have known.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in that, this season, we're talking about Psalm 34:5 and just being radiant. But the shame, right? And just the fact that to be radiant, our faces will never be covered in shame, right? But we have to deal with that.
Yep.
And for us, at least for me, I'm not going to speak for you. You can speak for yourself. So much of my physical brokenness and my health I've been ashamed of that. It's something that people don't see. And a lot of times I love not telling them. Like it's only been in the last couple of years that I've been very open with some of that. Right. And the same for you. Correct?
Yeah, it's a hard one for sure because it's such a daily private struggle. And I remember, I don't know if you feel like this with you and TC, but the work that I have to do to be okay, and my hubby can eat whatever he does. He can have a cup of coffee minutes before he goes to bed, and he's snoring and we're out to the pillow. I don't it's like he just is like steady Eddie. And we saw our functional med doc, and we got our labs done. And we were doing the Zoom call to go over the labs. And he had a couple of flag markers, but he's like, that will be easy remedied. You need a cardio shake in the morning and some metabolic thing at night. You, on the other hand, and he said, it's complicated. And it was just, I mean, I've been at this for a long time. I've been battling Lyme and mold issues and neuro issues for over 3 decades. But this just happened like a couple months ago. It's almost embarrassing to admit. But since we're getting rid of our shame, I literally broke down and cried because he didn't have answers for me. I waited 2 months for those lab results. And he said, it's too complicated. There's so many markers that are off that I'm going to have to do more research to figure out how we can help you. And I just fell apart. And I'm just like, I can't work harder than I do. And afterward, I sat down. I mean, I was embarrassed. I cried during the Zoom call. But he's a good friend, so otherwise probably would have held it together. But Kev sat me down. And he said, "You're not defective. You're effective." He said, "You just need to know that." And it's like, I know that theologically. You know, we're masterpieces. We're fearfully, wonderfully made. But when that's your daily reality, and there's an internal constant battle, you're showing up and people just eat what they want, do what they want. It seems like they show up without consequence in a way. And I know they have their other troubles, but there's something so personal about the physical thing that you really have to do mental gymnastics to get to a place where you go, okay, I'm going to believe what's true versus what feels true.
I went to a doctor that I should have gone to probably 20 years ago, but you neglect certain parts of your life. And I went in, and they went over everything, and they were like, "Okay, you're great. We'll see you next year." And my daughter's with me, and I looked at her, and I was like, "This is it." I'd never been to a doctor where there wasn't something else to go over.
That would make me cry too.
Yeah, I was so happy. Like I went and got a milkshake. Like I was like, "This is so fabulous."
This is we're celebrating.
Yeah,
a normal situation for someone else to be like, "Okay, great." See ya, right?
But that's not the normal case. And so I totally understand and empathize with the crying. And it's like, there's no answers. And I'm always hesitant. I think part of the shame of not talking about my own health stuff was the fact that it wasn't as bad as fill in the blanks.
Exactly. And yet it's a chronic daily issue that impairs and affects you in ways that cost you, right? Yeah. So wouldn't it be like the enemy to minimize our challenge and our struggles because it keeps us locked up in a narrative that's false? And I was there on the cruise when you spoke so bravely about your challenges. I was crying again. I must cry pretty easily, but I was crying when you were sharing. But I looked around. And women, because you are strong, you're a strong woman, and you come off as very put together, and you are put together. But for you to have that honest moment and share what that was like, I looked around, I saw women's jaws drop. I mean, and this is the thing, is that the enemy can keep us locked up in shame. He can keep us from helping each other and helping others to know you're not alone. Because I would venture to guess more women than not struggle in some way with some chronic
And that's what
affliction.
we're seeing with the research, right? Yeah. And whether it's chronic pain, sleep issues. I mean, part of being a middle-aged woman in perimenopause, menopause, we joke that that's what we say at Women of Joy is we talk about our health struggles and what that looks like with hormones. But so many, probably more than not, are walking with some type of health issue. And there's a balance in that too of how much of it we both also had trauma, right, in our past, and how our trauma affects our bodies.
100% it's scientifically proven that trauma, when you have the trauma, the past trauma, and then the health challenges of themselves are traumatic in a way, and as they say, nerves that fire together, wire together, you will interpret it differently. You physiologically will feel it differently. So that's a reality that we do have to sort through, for sure.
In the balance of what should I not do because I don't feel well, and pushing yourself. Any wisdom on that? It's constantly
that
learning.
is a constant tension, I would say. And, my background is in fitness. So this is the irony for me. And I contracted Lyme disease during our 3rd pregnancy. So prior to that, I taught some aerobic classes at our local church and then at a local health club. And I was a gymnast before that. So I had an athletic mindset. And they didn't know anything about Lyme back then. And it makes you look like a hypochondriac. So when things were starting to go awry in my body, people were judging, right? And so some were looking at me like, she's trying to get attention. And I'm an introvert, so I can't even tell you how bad I didn't want that kind of attention. And so... But I will tell you, when I got so sick, it probably was 7 years of just a horrific challenge, and I'll get into the rest of the journey later. But there was a point, I would take a shower once a week. That's all I had the strength for. I had 3 little boys who were very active and a party waiting to happen. And I was just dealing with night terrors of just neural symptoms going every which way. And I could feel my world shrinking. And I could tell that the more I told myself the story about what I couldn't do, my world was shrinking. And I remember lying on this couch that I had done 6 months of bed rest with a high-risk pregnancy, then months of sickness on that same couch, popping springs. It was just, and I had my fridge filled with IV bags, and my IV bag was hanging from mini blinds that were broken. I mean, my friends had health, they had wealth, their kids had name brand clothes, and I had none of those things. I felt literally like God lost my address. And I remember with that IV bag hanging, and I was so sick, and the Lord just whispered, focus on what you can do, not on what you can't do. And I thought, okay, I can't go teach a class. I can't even take a shower more than once a week. I can't take my boys to the park because if they run away, I won't have the strength to chase them. I felt so defective on every level. But I thought, I can stretch my hamstrings. You know, I know there's a fitness principle: use it or lose it. You know, I had no short-term memory. I mean, I was a pretty sorry case, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to memorize a passage of scripture. So I just looked at mind, body, spirit stuff, and like, I'm going to do the little I can do as an offering. And I would stretch or whatever. And as I got healthier, I just always pushed the envelope a little bit. If my body gave me an inch, I took it a mile. But then I always knew when I needed to get rest. And for me, that worked. And I will tell you, years later, I ran into the infectious disease doctor who cared for me. And he said, you were among my 7 sickest patients, you and another gal. And he said, and you and this gal are the only 2 with a life. She said the other 5, he said the other 5 are in wheelchairs or bound to bed. And the only common denominator I can find is you've refused to stop moving. You lived in the tension of self-compassion, getting the rest you need because you didn't have a normal body that other people had. So you had to abide by that in some ways, but you didn't let that be an excuse. And he said, that's my only explanation. It wasn't my expertise. And so I do think I'm very passionate about that, but it's not a formulaic thing. It's not an ought to and a should do. But I think you got to wrestle that through with the Lord. When am I allowing self-pity? When am I making an idol out of my pain? When am I getting my identity from my affliction? Because all those things will reinforce captivity. So for me, you know, I just really would just say over myself, you know, I'm not a sick person trying to get well. I'm a healthy person resisting illness. It helped me. That might not help you, but I think you have to find your faith declarations. You got to find your promises. And to this day, I have to live in that tension. I mean, to this day, there's days I can't do it and I need extra rest. And other days I'm like, I'm going to push this a little bit. So how about you? I would love to know what that's like for you.
No, same. I mean, it's a constant, I think it's very physical, but it's more mental than it is physical, like you're saying. And so it's a physical choice to get up. And part of my shame with it for a long time was I did not want my kids to see me sick. And so whatever I had to do to ensure that they didn't see me sick, I would do until the Lord put me in a hospital bed 10 years ago on Easter because I had ran myself into the ground and not wanting other people to see me that way. And then they had to see me that way.
Right.
And
what did that do to you? I mean, how you survived that? I'm sure it was humiliation, but what, could it have possibly served your family well for them?
It did, right? And then I realized, and so much of what I felt like God was telling me to be strong was not of God.
Exactly,
and it was Satan. And the girls needed to see someone who could keep getting up and keep fighting and keep doing the thing. And so it's that, and I'll say this too, because you brought it up, making an idol out of our pain. I'm not going to name names, but when you're in ministry, you can see people do that often. And so part of me too didn't want anyone, I didn't want to look like I was doing that or trying to build a platform off of being sick. But in that, I think there's so many women over the years that probably needed to hear my story that didn't, right?
Interesting.
But it's a constant mental gymnastics, as you said.
And don't you feel too, I mean, you're a hyper responsible person and you're carrying a lot. And I think that the grace of God allows you, when you're ready, you tell. You know, I mean, I don't know about you, but being a public person, I have more people telling me what I ought to and should do and how I should do it and where I should be at by now. But you can only work that out with the Lord. And it's like you have a valiant sense of responsibility as a wife and a mother and a ministry leader. And you got there when you got there. And that needs to be okay. And I really feel like someone maybe needs to hear that today because It's just not a one size fits all. And when Jesus saw the needs in the crowd, some people were in predicaments because they got themselves there. They're trashy choices. But others were there by no choice of their own. He was always moved by compassion and led with compassion, right? And so there's just more compassion in God's heart than there is dysfunction in ours. And so that's got to be okay, right?
Did you ever feel, I know I did, what did I do for my life to end up this way?
So much. So much, because I think in Western Christianity, I love the church. So I say this with the fear of God, and I say it carefully, but I just based on experience and the things that have been said to me. In Western Christianity, we love our formulas. And I think if I can have a formula, so I don't have to turn out like you, so I don't have to go through what you're going. I've had people say that. Tell me what you did, because I'm not going to do it because I don't want to have your life. Okay, that feels really good. But we love A plus B equals C. And honestly, in those years, my friends had health, they had wealth, and their kids were fine. And two of my kids were in and out of the hospital with respiratory issues. And I could not figure out what I'd done wrong. I was young enough in my faith to go, did I miss a step? And I think I would have latched onto a formula. If I would have gotten what I wanted, because I'm task-oriented, I think I would have latched onto a formula. And I remember just one day lying on that wretched couch, hooked up to that IV, just going, and I was in my young 30s, and I had no short-term memory left. And I'm just like, Lord, what? Am I a substandard Christian? Did I get in on a technicality? Like, what is that? What happened here? And if I need to do more, tell me what that is. And I don't know if someone told me this story. I read it somewhere, but it was just a little parable of a little sheep that kept wandering away. And finally, the little sheep got caught in a thicket, and it tried to break loose, and it broke its leg, and it got stuck. And so the shepherd found it, because it just kept wandering from the flock. And the shepherd found it, released it, and put it around his neck, and carried it among. I guess shepherds do this when they've got a wounded little lamb. They carry it over their shoulders so that they're close by and they're near the activity that's normal for them to do. But what happens is the little lamb develops an attachment to the shepherd, because it's like their heart starts to beat in rhythm with the shepherd, and they develop actually a dependence on the shepherd and even an intolerance for distance. And once that little lamb's healed, it stays on the shepherd's heels. It's not prone to wander. And I think there's more than one way to wander. You can wander into the ditches of sin, but you can also wander into the ways of self-striving. And maybe that's where I would have wandered. And I'm not saying God made me sick to teach me a lesson. I think I hear that all of the time. I don't believe that. He's a good father, but I think he allowed it because it cultivated such a profound dependence on God. I don't trust myself like I would probably if I would have had a different life. And so that's a long answer. I guess there's questions I'm going to have to get answered on the other side, but it hasn't been wasted on me, and I don't know who I would be if I would have had what I wanted when I wanted it.
And I'm a fix-it person.
Me too.
You're a fix-it person. And God's granted us things that we can't fix this side of heaven.
That's right.
Barring a miracle.
That's right.
And that's somewhere our theology can get a little mixed up, where we're always praying for healing. We're always praying for a miracle, but that also doesn't mean that you stop living your life.
No, and that's the thing is, one of the things the Lord impressed upon my heart years ago that rocked me is He said, Susie, you don't have to feel well to be powerful in the kingdom. That rocked me, and because again, if you make an idol out of your weakness and out of your pain, it's all about you. And it's not about God. But He's the God of the impossible. In fact, Scripture says, let the weak say, I am strong. When He talked about in Jeremiah, plant gardens, get married, have babies, seek the prosperity of your city. I know you're a slave, but grow here, flourish here, dwell here. And that has just rocked me because, you know what? I'm like, okay, I have limits. But God has no limits. So, many years ago when I realized I have to live in the tension of respecting my limits, but I am not going to baby myself. So, Lord, in my limits, do the impossible in and through me. So what's the next step I can take? And, Megan, it culminated for me, honestly, just a handful of years ago. I was speaking at a family camp, and I have my book table out there, and my books were there, and this woman said, well, I just heard your story about your battle with Lyme and mold toxicity and chronic affliction. And she goes, how did you write all these books? And honestly, I'm like, I don't know. Now that I think about it, oh my goodness. But it was like one tiny little faith step at a time. And so I just think you can do anything that God calls you to do in your weakest state if you just trust him, you know.
But it also grants the beauty of dependency.
Oh, and my husband always says that's your superpower.
Yes.
I think, you know, I've been working in radio for 17 years, and I've interviewed notable leaders who've had very public crashes. And when I caught up with them after and asked what happened, they would often say, you know, I got so busy working for God, I stopped walking with God. And that's why I love dependence. You know, I mean, I don't know about you, and this is a very vulnerable thing to say, but I've actually wondered. I'm believing for full healing. I know I'm going to be healed. If not in this life, the next life. I'm getting a new body. I'm going to eat pizza and cheesecake. I'm just telling you right now. I think about that a lot, right? And I'm expectant about healing, and I think it's good for your body to have an expectancy for good things. I've done a lot of research about that. However, I got to just say, in these moments of depending on God, I see that's where his power comes to bear. We make it too much about ourselves. And I've gotten an email from a lady that said, a leader at your level and you're not healed? Like, where's your faith? I mean, what kind of witness is that? And I think it's a cruel theology to say that you do it right, you're going to get right. You have godly parents who have prodigals. You have a godly wife whose husband still left. And if we put these things into a formula, to me, it's a cruel theology because it sets people up for absolute despair when they do right and don't get right. You know what I'm saying? So somehow, some way, we have got to go. There's a mystery to following God. It matters if I think redemptively. I mean, we could do a whole nother show on redemptive thinking. I'm super passionate about that. But it's not, how do I want to say this? I'll just say it out loud. I don't subscribe to the health and wealth gospel. I think that and
it would be an empty gospel for us.
It would be. I mean, if it doesn't exactly,
it just would be.
That
Like,
doesn't work for me. But I
Yeah.
also think of those in a third world country and those who are being crucified for their faith today, right now. Like, if the gospel doesn't work in third world countries among the persecuted, it's not the true gospel, right? But I guess I get a lot of that put on me. I don't know about you, but it's the pressure of formula. And somehow, if you're not fixing this yet, you're somehow deficient in your faith. Meanwhile, while we're the person suffering and sorting it through, we can get in our own way by thinking wrong about it, telling ourselves the wrong story.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's its own thing, I think, to live in that tension with the Lord.
The thing that I have learned, and you live this, I mean, I feel like I've known you a long time and I've only known you a few months. It requires immense discipline.
Yeah.
And that is what God taught me in that hospital bed 10 years ago.
Yes.
Was you're doing what I've called you to do, but you have no discipline in the way that I'm asking you to do this. And so discipline is going to bed last night at 8:30
right.
and
There
resting.
you go.
Discipline is choosing to eat the Greek yogurt instead of the cheesecake, right?
Yep,
Like there
drinking
there
your
is
water.
a discipline component to all
Saying
of this.
no to some of the toxins that you know, whether that's situations or, you know, to know your limits. And especially when you look healthy, you know, you have to be content to be misunderstood. Because if people look at you, you look at like the picture of health and you go, you know, I have to go to bed early tonight. Not everybody's going to get that. Not everybody's going to respect that even. And to me, that's like being content to be misunderstood and employing those disciplines are extremely important. But again, like not being legalistic about it. Like I had a massive relapse a decade ago that was also tied in with mold toxicity. And I had 7 areas of brain damage from, I mean, on my MRI, they said your brain MRI looks like an Alzheimer's brain. It's horrifying. I'd be on the air and I would forget the words that I was saying. It was such a nightmare that it was about 7 years of hard. And I actually had to see a counselor afterward just to sort through the trauma of it all. And I remember, and you have to be super disciplined to detox from mold. It's very nuanced and what you have to do to get that stuff out of your body. And God was so silent that I felt like he forgot about me. And I'm a seasoned follower. Like I'm not that I'm above it, but I'm old. I mean, it's like I'm old enough to know He knows where I live, but he was so quiet. And it was like I was praying about things in other parts of my life, and he would move. And in the area that was killing me, it was crickets. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way, like, where are you in this area? And so what I did is took my discipline to a legalistic level. I mean, really, like I brought it upon myself. I was crossing every T, dotting every I. I was not free. I was captive. I was reinforced. I made a law out of my discipline. And I know we're getting kind of probably in the weeds about this, but if you're sick or have any chronic issue, you know what I'm talking about. And the Lord whispered in my heart, he said, Susie, you acquire a healthy life through stewardship and a healed life through faith. The kind of healing you need, you've got to partner with me in. I've not forgotten where you live. I'm with you. And if I'm silent, remember what I told you in the dark. And remember what I told you. Remember in the darkness what I told you in the light. And I started to think about, okay, some of these disciplines are necessary and healthy. And then I added to them. To me, it's like, you know, Jesus plus when you try to add to the gospel. I mean, truly, like I started to look at, I added this because God wasn't talking to me. So I had to pull those things back and go, okay. I mean, if you think about just health in general, God's not obligated to make you healthy if you're going to keep trashing your body. That's just true.
Yes.
You know, it's like if you aren't disciplined, and then there's no judgment about it. I'm just saying.
It's just reality.
It's reality. You know, there's laws of nature. You know, what you sow is what you grow. And so there is a reality to that. But then there's an element, because there's trauma involved with chronic affliction, whether it's mental health issues, you know, physical affliction, that we need a supernatural touch of God to live in the tension of believing for the best, stewarding what he's allowing, and continuing to keep hope alive in our hearts. That's a supernatural proposition, and you cannot do that without God. So I don't know if that helps, but for me,
No, it does.
it's just my reality for sure. Yeah.
It is. And we can subscribe. There is a fine line with legalism. And I think for me, I'm going to make an assumption about you, and it may be wrong, but I can have grace for everyone around me and zero grace for myself. And sometimes...
And that's where the shame comes in.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so recognizing that, and God is so kind, right? Like when I think of God, I just think of someone who's so kind and loving toward me and allows me to live within the space where I can mess it up, you know, and gives grace.
And you still have the smile. You still have the smile.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
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 But you choose that.
Exactly.
Right. And that's
exactly
where that discipline comes in, because
Yeah.
I get so, it's a soapbox. Like,
And don't you, it's costly though. If you do mess up, it's costly. That's the tricky thing.
Very
It's like
costly.
you pay a price.
That's a
You're not
great point.
making up those boundaries. You pay a price if you don't abide by them. But he's not rolling his eyes when you mess up.
No, he's not. He's
Yeah.
gracious. But there can be, I know I've worked through this in my own life, this feeling for women of I'm less than, or I can't do the thing that I feel like God's calling me to do because of my health. And that's just not true.
No,
That's just not true.
it's very true. It's true that it's not true.
Yes.
And I think if you can just dare to dream in the middle of despair, that's actually a faith offering to God. And your call's going to look different than someone else's, but you didn't get where you are overnight. You didn't start from the sick bed to the place that you are. You know, it was a breadcrumb after a bread, following Jesus one baby step at a time. And so I would say to that person watching right now, it's probably hard for you to imagine, writing a full book or teaching a Bible study or starting a battered women's shelter, whatever it is that God's put on your heart. But you do the next thing, and you do the next thing. And for me, it's like the only way I've been able to do that is to respect my limits, but then appeal to the God who has no limits and say, do it. Do the impossible in and through me. And when I would have these flares, my temptation, because they're scary, neurological symptoms are terrifying, that always a default response would be to brace for impact, to pull back, to want to cancel all the stuff on my calendar. And the Lord would just, there's fear again, there's fear again. So what would faith require of you? Keep your wits about you. I have not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, sound mind. Do the next thing. Take a nap, have a snack, call a friend and pray with them over the phone. But just it's a nuanced journey. But when you do that and then you keep daring to dream in the face of fear, boy, that's when you start to see miracles happen.
And the self-pity piece.
Oh, yeah.
Like I have a
I
friend.
had the party hat. I had it all.
yes.
I had the blower.
yes. And I can, I've told my girls even like, I can allow myself a day sometimes to just feel bad for myself and be in it, but a day,
Yeah.
not a week.
Exactly.
You can't.
So good. So good.
You
No.
can't allow that because if
Exactly
you do,
right.
Satan
Yeah.
has a field day
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. And for me, I could so default there because of the contrast, especially in this space of where you're around, authors and speakers. And, I know you've had plenty that you've worked with who, do their thing and then go out at night and drink coffee and
I remember the days of going to the Waffle House after
night.
events,
Yeah.
like at youth, till like 2 a.m.
and then get up in the morning.
There's no way.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the temptation to compare and then despair is so huge for me, and to see how easy things come that I have to work so hard for, But for me, I realized that it's self-compassion that I need, where I know God has compassion. I know He's patient. He knows where I'm at in the journey. And I actually don't want anybody's pity because it sends me into the ditch. I want your prayers. I want your grace. I want a little bit of understanding that I may look healthy on the outside, but I got some things that I deal with. But I have the presence of God. I've got the promises of God. And, I have to answer Him alone. I have to give Him an offering for my life. My critics aren't going to be there. My pity party friends aren't going to be there. I have to give an account on my own. And so I want to live worthy of Him,
Do you find it hard? Like, I'll just be real. I hate when people tell me I'm sorry that this is your life, because that indicates that it's not
a good
life or what God intended.
Yeah.
And this is not a surprise to
Exactly.
God. And so, I mean, do you find that?
I
or
don't
is it-
like that at
Yeah,
all.
it-
And you know what else I love, which I don't love? The number of women who said, on one hand, I want to do some of the things you do, but I don't want your life. I don't want to deal with what you've done, so I'm not even going to ask God. There's so much wrapped up in that. I'm like,
deep.
I have a really rich life, an abundant life. And to be honest, Megan, I shudder to think of who I would be if not for the things I've suffered. Jesus learned obedience through the things He suffered. And I would say we're both still walking miracles, And wouldn't you say the nuance of living in the tension has made you a warrior? I know it's made me a warrior. To me, it's like the old Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, It's like self-compassion and yet daring to dream big, giving myself a rest, pushing myself when I should. Living in that constant tension, to me, is Psalm 18. He trains my hands for battle. He strengthens my arms to bend a bow of bronze. And I'm sure you've heard this too, but I've heard people say when they've heard me share or speak to say, that's coming from your gut. You're not talking theory here. You're talking something you've paid
lived it.
for.
Yeah.
You've lived it. And that's worth it to me,
Did you find, I know for me, I had to learn to love my body as something that God created.
You should do a whole show on that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not the boss of you. But anyway,
No.
you should think about that,
Yeah.
especially for those of us who walk through this.
It's hard.
I remember the day the Lord impressed upon my heart to say, my body is my friend, and I'm safe in my body. And I thought I was going to throw up. And that showed me that there was still trauma that was lingering. And I've done the work. I'm not walking around like a victim,
Yeah.
2 of the traumas that happened in my past, which you know about, one as a child, I was 9 years old, was sexually assaulted by teenage boys. And at 10 years old, I was walking home from school and was jumped and beaten by a group of boys, pummeled and punched in the face, ripped hair out. I mean, that was so traumatic, I can't even tell you. And like you said earlier, because you have a different nervous system after you've experienced trauma, sickness gets into your cells. Physiologically, that is a proven fact. And so to feel like so defective and so constantly like I'm at a deficit just messes with me so much. And so the idea of that I am His child and He is redeeming my story and He is going to work all things together for the good. I just need to hold on to those promises because my nervous system can default to that, even though I've done the work. I feel
Even
like,
when your mental state is not.
exactly,
Like our bodies can go to that. And it's really alarming.
Don't you feel like
Yeah.
it can trigger like, no, I was thinking good
Yeah.
thoughts just now. What just happened? But that's how impacted our bodies are by the things we endure. Why this is such an important conversation.
But also that's why Paul focuses so much to me on the mind.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew trauma
Yes,
and he
indeed.
knew all the things, but
Yeah.
yet within that, he says you can be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and we can actually renew our minds. And that's where I think the Lord's really been teaching me that in the last few years is my mind tells my body what to do.
That's right.
Like it's not the opposite.
We have more agency than we think. And on my
Yes.
radio show, I have a brain neuroscientist on my show. He's a brain spine surgeon. Every month we talk about the renewal of mind. But one of the things he said, that is your strongest emotions reveal your strongest beliefs. And so this is worth thinking about. Whether you're dealing with mental health issues or thought processes around your physical affliction, when you're feeling the big negative emotion, it really is wise to zoom back for a moment to go, what am I believing right now? Because you might have right theology on a good day, but those bursting emotions reflect what your body believes, what you know what I mean? Like, I think I'm going to have to live with this my whole life. I think I actually am a have-not. I think really it's never going to be any different. And I'm trying to buck up buttercup all the time. But I feel like a second-rate, second class, like I've got some leftover. Those are the thoughts that will come to me when I'm in a tough stretch. But when I've been zeroing in on negative emotions and what's the belief behind them, it has been super helpful for me to go, wait a minute, do I really believe that? No, I have a history with God. That feels true, but I know it's not true. And then I can go after that. That helps me get my mindset right a little quicker.
No, that's so good. And just knowing like we're stewarding our bodies and we will be healed.
Yeah.
Maybe not this side of heaven, which is
Yeah.
hard.
Right.
It's hard till it's not hard.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Exactly
like
right.
it's hard
Yep.
until
Yeah.
we accept it and really deal with that grief.
Yeah.
So let's get into just some practical things women can do that are dealing with chronic health issues. And even within marriage, I don't know, I just feel like we should talk about this a little bit. Like you mentioned your husband. I have a great husband. What about the woman that says my husband does not understand what I'm walking through with this?
I would wrap her up and hug. I would just tell her how sorry I am, because it's hard enough with a supportive husband, you know, to imagine trying to do that with a husband who doesn't understand. But then I would say, you have got to lean into the Lord like you never have, because he's a father to the fatherless, you know, he's a husband to the widow, and you might feel a little bit like that, like you're suffering alone. But the Lord knows somehow, some way. But I also would ask the Lord, would you put people in my life to fill in the gaps where maybe he's falling down, you know? Women, of course, not men, if you're just for safety's sake, but that the Lord would bring you some intimate friends to stand with you and pray with you. I've got a couple of gals that we're on a prayer call every single week, and we go around. We start with Thanksgiving, thanking God for things. We you know, enter his gates with thanksgiving, his courts with praise, and then we go for it with the things that are on our hearts. And I would strongly, strongly suggest you get some safe, godly women, and you connect with them every week, and you're honest. You know, you truth tell to each other. And you know how Scripture says, you know, confess your sins to the Lord, you're forgiven. Confess your sins to one another, and you're healed. I would also say confess your hardship, your grief, because that is where healing happens, is in community. And here's another thing where you could get into pity because you see other women who've got a great husband, but you do have some things other people don't have. He doesn't ever leave anybody. He's kind. The Bible says, Psalm 145, he's kind to everyone. So you have some kindnesses in your life that others might look at and envy as well. And so I would stay away from self-pity, but I would get some godly women and be honest and truth tell and walk together and practice some self-compassion without letting it go into the victim mentality. And I would say push yourself a little bit too, because you know that they're realizing now, brain science is that in the Western culture, again, we've idolized comfort and ease and leisure and those kinds of things, and what we have done is absolutely diminished our brain capacity. It's like your brain is made to do hard things. So you need to be able to tell yourself, I can do hard things. In fact, I would do one hard thing a day, whether that's clean out a closet or, you know, bake a pie and bring it to your neighbor. Because no matter what you're suffering, there's someone who's suffering worse than you. So ask the Lord to show you who's suffering worse than I am, and do a hard thing. You know, give of yourself in some way. And I'm not saying lay your whole life out to the point that you're on the altar at all.
No, but one thing. I
One
love that.
thing.
One thing.
One hard thing, but and tell yourself, I can do hard things. You know, I remember one day I was at the bottom of our house is just a 2-level rambler, and I was just exhausted, and I just was so tired of being tired, sick and tired. And I heard the whisper of the Lord, take those steps. You're stronger than you think. And I ran up the stairs, and then I was exhausted. But I'm like, no, my narrative was going towards weakness again. And I just think that there's a way to do that where it's like you walk with people, you do hard things, and you pay attention to the story that you're telling yourself, you know?
Yeah, that's so good. We have my friend does like hand lettering, and she made us a sign that says we do hard things.
That's good.
And it hangs by the entrance to our garage because I want my kids to know we do hard things. We don't, but it's I'm looking at that every time I exit the house, right?
That's
like
so
we
good.
do hard things.
And doesn't that feel good to read and hear?
It
Because
does.
you can
Yes.
do it. And when
Yes.
people say to you, I'm so sorry about your life, Megan, they have no idea the hard things you do every single day. You don't need pity. You have the presence of God. You have the promises of God, and you're going to be fine, you know? And there's a massive reward for you. God knows when you're operating out of weakness and still serving Him, still showing up, guarding against a bad attitude, there's a massive reward for you in heaven. God sees it, you know? And for the person who can show up with total health and all the stuff going, you know, and they don't have to work as hard, I mean, God bless them. But it's like when it costs you something, God sees and He makes note of it.
And I think we've seen, I know at least for me, the Holy Spirit do so much more than if I was healthy, because there are so many things that I accomplished that I know are not of me because my body couldn't physically do them. But in that, it's not complete healing. It's just working within what God has granted me.
Yeah.
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 I want to speak to doctors a little bit.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on radio. That's the joke. So I can answer
but
any of
it's
your
good.
questions.
Well, just vulnerability with doctors.
Yes,
so many
yes.
women, we are the last ones that get taken care of. And some of the chronic health needs that some of us have, I just had a surgery last year that I'd put off for a long time, right? Because of other things and just being busy. Like, we have to stop and take care of ourselves, and we have to listen to our bodies. But that requires vulnerability with doctors and understanding. I don't know, just what is your wisdom in that? Because you've dealt with many doctors over the years as well. And that's hard for me. Like, there's
very
nothing
much.
I hate worse than going to a new
Me too.
doctor. Because I don't want to tell you all the things. Like, I just want
And
you
I
to
don't
know.
want you to dismiss it or minimize it, and or you know, or be overly concerned over something that's not. I mean, I feel exactly the same way, and I have a couple of pretty horrific experiences in my early years, and again, that really impacted me in a deep way. I will say right now, we've got a group of doctor friends who are believers, and so I'm so grateful that because I'm safe, because they are compassionate, they're humble, they're brilliant, and I can reach out to them. But to the woman who doesn't have that, I would ask the Lord, lead me to doctors who have compassion, who have a fear of God, who are wise. And I would marry traditional and functional medicine together. And just an experience, if I could just say, you know, there is a place for traditional medicine and we need it. But when they're taking labs, they're looking for active disease. And if they, let's say you feel off, you have symptoms, and they see no active disease, some doctors will say there's nothing wrong with you, and you will feel completely dismissed, where that's not exactly true. If they widened the labs and took more of a broader draw, they would see you're low on iron or low on B12 or whatever, and there's all these drops in your numbers, and those, if not addressed, would become active disease. So I would marry traditional and functional medicine if you can, and it's worth praying for, because you're vulnerable enough with health things. To put yourself in the care of a doctor is such a vulnerable thing. And if they're not, they have a bad bedside manner, if they're rude, if they're formulaic, to me, it's just a double bind. It's so hard. So ask the Lord, ask around, and it's worth finding, even if you have to drive to the next state to find a good doctor. Same here. And it's worth it to me. I'm glad you asked about it, because I think I would put great care into who you submit yourself to.
Yeah. But then we have to trust, and that's hard for me.
Yeah, that's true.
Very, very hard.
Yeah.
But we also, you said your doctors are believers. Mine are as well. And that's taken a long time to get to that place.
Exactly.
Where they are, but it makes a difference.
It does.
It does.
And they've prayed for me.
Yeah.
You know, there was one, if I could tell you this quick story, Many years ago, I was going into my functional med doc, and he joins me on my show every month, and people love him because he has such a shepherd's heart. But I was getting ready to do a speaker circuit, and I knew it was coming, and so I went to bed at 8:30, quarter to 9, and people roll their eyes, but I'm like, see you later, drinking all my water, doing all my vitamins. I'm like, I'm going to cross every T, dot every I, because I'm responsible, and I know what this is going to cost me. Still, the week I'm ready to travel, the scratchy throat comes and all the body aches, and I couldn't believe it. And I was going in to see him for a different reason, but I was holding myself in so much contempt. I was beside myself, but I didn't want him to know it. But he knew me well enough to know.
Yeah, he knew.
He's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I'm good, I'm good." And he's like, "No, you're not. What's going on?" And I said, "Well," and then I explained, I've done all this stuff, and whenever I feel this, it turns into pneumonia or bronchitis, and it takes weeks. And I've got these events, and what I can't stand, and I don't know if you've ever had this, but when event hosts have to accommodate you because you have limits. I hate that so bad. I don't want to be that person.
Which is shame.
It's shame. oh my goodness. I just, and so, I mean, I lost it in his office, and I just I almost hated myself for it. And this was, 10, 15 years ago. But he said, "Susie, we'll get to your other symptoms in a minute, but I want you just to indulge me." He said, "Open your hands and say to the Lord, I accept me and I trust you." I'm like, what? And he said, "Say, I accept me and I trust you." And he said, "You're a responsible person, I can tell." But he said, "I think you believe you failed your kids when they were young because you battled Lyme disease. I think you're afraid to fail these event hosts, and you don't want them to see your weakness. You don't want any accommodating, and you're terrified of being the problem. And so say it. I accept me and I trust you." And I unleashed a guttural sob. Like, there was so much self-contempt. He goes, "Susie," he said, "self-contempt will do more damage to your cells than sickness ever will." He said, "At some point, you've got to trust God with your limits and trust that he will get you through them." He goes, "I think you're going to overcome. But until then, you have got to accept with grace that this is your reality and God is with you in it." And, it reminded me of what I said to you a little bit earlier ago. I didn't finish the thought, but I'm safe in my body. I'm safe in God's care. And I remember the Lord brought me to, it's at 1 Peter 2:24. He personally carried my sins in his body on the cross so that I could be dead to sin and alive to God. By his wounds, we are healed. And when you say I'm safe in my body, or I accept me and I trust you, and it feels like you want to throw up, it means something in you needs some healing. And it means shame is still present in your story, for sure.
But when you can say it and there's freedom, it's such a beautiful thing.
It's so great. And it's where God wants us to get.
It is.
And that's why I love that you cared enough about this topic to want to address it today, because so many women are trying to show up in life, trying to laugh at the jokes that all the girls are laughing at, while inside there's this inner turmoil because they haven't sorted through their weaknesses and their shame and their story in a way that brings them to a place of freedom where, like, you know what, I get to be a work in progress without the condemnation. I get to show up with needs and limits. I still have things to offer. And God is still going to do the impossible in and through me. And it's really okay. I have to go to bed at 8:30.
It is. And I go back to something you said at the beginning of what can my body do?
That's right.
And that's where we have to focus. And sometimes that may be leading a group at your church. I mean, there's so many things that it could be, but providing a safe place for women is huge as well. And so, gosh, this has been so good. I think we'll have to pick back up here and have another episode on this stuff and get deeper at some point.
Thank you for caring so much about women that you would talk about this.
It needs to, it's not talked about a lot.
Nope.
It's not. And we need it because so many women are walking around hurting. And when you share your story, you hear from all of those women.
Yes.
Right. That are hurting and are dealing with this stuff. So one question that we ask every guest as we end the show: what is something in your personal life right now, spiritual or not, that's bringing you unexpected joy in this season of your life?
Wow, that is a good one. We've walked through some hard things in this last year and some just new symptoms that have been hard. And Kev's had some work stresses that have been hard and some other family things that have been hard. And there is a sense that the season is shifting, and so they're just anticipating what God has been, I'm a brain science nerd. And did you know that anticipating good is actually like fuel for your brain? And as Christians, expectancy should be central to our faith. So as I've been cultivating expectancy that God is going to deliver us out of a hard season, because that's biblical and he promises to do that. But to move out of bracing for impact into anticipating his goodness brings me so much joy. I mean, to rejoice before the answer comes, because there's going to be a day my faith becomes sight and I won't need faith anymore, because I get to see Jesus and get to see all of the loose ends tie up in our stories. But now is when I get to have faith. Now is when I can please him with my faith. So Kevin and I, just in our prayer time, have been thinking, lining up all the things that we need breakthroughs in and going, thank you, God. We've walked with you long enough to know when we think of hardships in the past, you have been so good. And not only thank you in this thing, I thank you for it, because you're that good. And it's been so great to just cultivate an expectancy based on history.
That's so good, Susie. So good. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for being on the road with us and all the things. We're just delighted by your walk with the Lord and how you pour into me and pour into all the thousands of women across the country that follow you. So thank you.
Thank you. Just love your family so much. Thanks for all you guys do for the kingdom.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Susie Larson. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. And most importantly, all the things that we discussed in the podcast today are linked in the show notes. I hope to see you soon at a Women of Joy Live event.